So when I was in school, there was one subject that I always found particularly challenging. And I think quite a few other people also find this subject challenging too. Maybe not everyone, but that's math. And I never quite, when I know vulnerable children didn't find that challenging. But it all makes sense because I finally figured out why I was bad at math. And that's because the self-centered attitude is terrible at math. Hence, vulnerable children is good at math. So there's reasons for this. I've noticed that the self-centered attitude, it's like a computer program that's constantly running in the back of my mind. It's trying to calculate how to maximize benefits I get out of the situation and how to minimize losses. So it's always strategizing and computing even very minute details for how to maximize pleasure and praise and good reputation, and how to minimize any kind of loss or discomfort or criticism. And it's constantly assessing and weighing how much I have in relation to others and where I stand in relation to others. So this is a very draining exercise that I've only just recently recognized as draining and as actually quite inaccurate, unreliable. Often my self-centered mind says, this is about fairness. You have to ensure you get what's owed to you, what's due to you. You know, this is important. This is justice. But actually it's entitlement and it's greed. So Venerable Children has also been pointing this out to me, and I didn't get it for a long time. But now it's starting to dawn on me that my idea of justice might be a little bit skewed. But I still think it's important. You know, we should fight for justice on a social level. You know, equality is very important for group harmony. But yeah, the kind of justice that I find myself wrapped up in is no good. So yeah, there are other ways that the self-centered attitude is very inaccurate. It tends to hold on to all the negative interactions I've had with people, all the things they did I don't like, or the things they said I didn't like, and that is like huge. And then all the good things and the kindness that they've given me is like minuscule. It's completely imbalanced. And the result of that is feeling really disconnected from people and feeling like I don't live in a kind community, which is the complete opposite. So it's really shocking how skewed that self-centered mind can be in assessing like what's the reality of the situation. Venerable Children has mentioned how we store up all of these things in our mind and then they're ready to just fly out when the other person crosses that line. And growing up, my mother would do that all the time and I hated it, but I see myself doing it now. And at the time when somebody does something, I don't like consciously think, I'm gonna save this for later. Sometimes it doesn't even really sink in, but then later I see it coming out and I'm like, wow, there is a scorekeeper in there and they are working overtime. So it's really strange in that way. And this reminded me of a quote that the Buddha gave in the Dhammapada describing this tendency. So that quote is, he abused me, he struck me, he overpowered me, he robbed me. And what's the result of holding on to these thoughts? Well, you never get rid of that anger, you never get rid of that hatred. And there's a strong tendency to just hoard it like it's something valuable. But those who actually give up this really miserable act of scorekeeping, they're able to let go of their anger and to heal and to move on and to be happy. So another really poor calculation of the self-centered attitude is probability of death and time of dying. This is maybe more related to the ignorance, the self-grasping ignorance, but I did a lot of reckless things as a teenager that endangered not only my own life, but the lives of others. And I was totally not thinking about the lives of others, like reckless driving, things like that. And when it comes to time of death, well, that's always, later on. It's not even on the radar of self-centered attitudes computer screen. So it's like totally asleep at the wheel in that sense. And then predicting what leads to happiness and what leads to suffering. Um, of course, the self-centered attitude thinks it's pleasure here and now, and never mind if I have to step over somebody or say something harsh to get my way. Well, that's what's going to lead to happiness, and that's totally not true. But then the grossest area of inaccurate calculation is when it comes to taking and giving. And for the self-centered attitude, hoarding and being miserly, well, that's seen as the ticket to wealth and to comfort and to security. And giving, that's like totally nuts. I mean, you're going to end up with nothing. You're going to be poor. You're going to be broke, and nobody's going to want to talk to you because, you're poor. Thankfully, the Buddha taught the law of karma and showed to everyone that's actually not true. The cause of abundance and wealth is actually giving, and the cause of poverty is stealing and miserliness. And there's a quote from Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life in Chapter 8 that really illustrates this quite well. It says, "If I give them, what shall I enjoy? Such thinking for my own purpose is the way of hungry ghosts." And of course, hungry ghosts never have enough. But if instead I think, if I enjoy them, what shall I give? Shantideva says, such thinking for others' purpose is a quality of the gods, and gods have more than they need. So these are two completely opposite equations, but it's really sad to see just how much the self-centered attitude dominates the thinking process in my mind most of the time. And Venerable Chochen tells a story about a man who was afraid to dedicate his merit after he did his practice because he said, well, I don't really have much to begin with, and if I give it away, what will I have? And I laughed when I first heard this story, but that's exactly the kind of thinking that's happening when somebody asks me for help, and I'm like, no, I'm already busy, okay? I got enough to do, please. And I want to give the self-centered attitude a little bit of credit. How does subtracting lead to addition? It's just, it doesn't seem to make sense on a common sense level. But yesterday, I got a firsthand experience how this could be the case. And many of us went to Kuni's Thai cuisine for lunch yesterday. And that was recently voted the best Thai restaurant in Spokane. And they're closed on Mondays, but she and her whole staff decided to take their day off to cook for the Sangha. And they invited us to come, and the restaurant was completely empty. And all of them were there, and they were just beaming with joy and just this beautiful, calm, loving presence and this attentiveness. And, we were the ones who were eating delicious food, but I could tell that they were the ones getting the bigger gift, actually, because I was just focused on trying not to eat too much and to restrain my greed and my gluttony, while they were creating all this merit. And I know that just the positive feelings and the sense of goodness and positivity that came out of their actions probably lasted with them the whole day. While eating that food, it lasted at most a couple hours. So, yeah, and I've also had personal experiences with some family members who are very generous. My grandmother and my aunt, they would invite people to their house on a regular basis and just serve them and all day long, and they were so joyful to do that. And I could tell that that's real happiness. Meanwhile, the next generation, including me, were playing video games and just whining and complaining. And so that really didn't lead to long-term happiness. So my dad, he was really good at math, so I would always ask him for help with my homework. He's an electrical engineer, and he would go like into these calculus theories for like grade 4 math. So it wasn't always exactly helpful. But now I understand why, and it's because he's actually also quite generous. He's been very generous with me, with my mother, with his other family members, with his friends. So I think that just is kind of like proof that, yeah, if you're not so self-centered, you could be better at math. So I think it's a good reason to start practicing the Dharma. If you want to get into a good college. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, if you benefit countless sentient beings, of course the return is going to be so much greater than benefiting just one sentient being. And I was thinking bodhicitta is like some exponential multiplier. It just takes all the benefit and increases it exponentially. Who knows how far it goes? So may we all continue to try to reduce our self-centeredness so that we can make it closer to omniscience, and then we can solve any math problem that's put before us.